Hey! Welcome to the OSS,
where we empower students in the classroom
toward commencement
and for their calling.
We offer tons of resources for all students. Upstairs, we have a study space, the tutoring center, and the writing center.
And downstairs, we have disability services and the Veteran Resource Center. We also house 2 multidisciplinary honor societies, Alpha Chi for on-campus students and Alpha Sigma Lambda for online.
We have over 150 seats here at the OSS.
And even reservable study rooms.
So that means we have plenty of space for you to come on over and tackle those tough assignments.
Come visit us in Lancer Arms.
Next to the Event Center.
See you soon.
This leader is provided to permit the projectionist to complete adjustment of focus and sound level before the film begins.
That's a cut.
The mission of the University Writing Center at California Baptist University is to cultivate purpose-driven writers, communicators, and influencers. In an increasingly digital and multimedia culture, communicating clearly and persuasively is one of the most essential skills to have in any industry or profession. Many of the most successful men and women have been people of action, but also people of words, who learn to tell their stories and draw others in to share in their successes. For 2,500 years, influential thinkers, makers, and leaders were trained in the study of rhetoric, which provided powerful tools to establish credibility, develop arguments, and move audiences. By updating classical principles of rhetoric for the 21st century, the University Writing Center helps students connect the dots between what they're learning in the classroom and how they can be successful in their careers. To help connect those dots, the Writing Center organizes an annual Distinguished Public Lecture and Award to bring industry professionals in who exemplify this mission. Beginning in 2021, Nancy Duarte, CEO of one of the leading communication firms in Silicon Valley, taught us how to communicate data through timeless storytelling techniques to help executive leaders make critical decisions and inspire action. In 2022, the hip-hop and spoken word artist Propaganda used the science fiction concept of terraforming other planets as a metaphor for turning hostile environments into hospitable spaces that reflect a more biblically just society. In 2023, Eric Motley, Deputy Director of the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., shared his memoir about his journey from Madison Park, Alabama to the White House, showing us how remembering our past communities can sustain us with hope to overcome present and future obstacles. And tonight, we're excited to bring to you Ralph Winter, award-nominated film producer and head of creative for the Sphere, Las Vegas, who will show us how movies help us ask the deepest questions of our desires and point us toward truth. Here at the University Writing Center, we believe in building up students to become men and women of both words and action. For if ideas truly have the power to transform the world, then it is through writing that we will share those ideas and influence others. We hope that tonight, you too will be inspired to become writers who communicate clearly and persuasively to live your purpose.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Dr. Josh Fullman, and I am director of the University Writing Center here at Cal Baptist University. And we want to give you a special welcome for being part of our 2024 University Writing Center Distinguished Public Lecture. We are delighted whether you're here in person or visiting us online. We have had over 350 participants who are joining us at this event today, and we are grateful. The mission of the University Writing Center is to cultivate purpose-driven writers, communicators, and influencers. Writing is just another form of thinking, and thinking is a messy business. You plan, you prepare, you write, you revise, you scratch that. You start over. You get rid of the redundancies. And by the time you're done, you have a finished product. And you hope you're communicating what you think you're communicating. Our theme this year is in medias res, a Latin expression that means in the middle of things. And that encapsulates the mission of what we're all about at the Writing Center. It's a picture of what it's like to work on a project for a long time. And as college students, you understand well what that means, to work on projects for a long time and to be in the middle of things, struggling forward through the middle of a semester, in the middle of classes, in the middle of career choices, in the middle of writing that dreaded term paper. You know that it is in the middle that life is the most difficult sometimes, the most confusing, the most challenging, in the writing and in the revising. It's easy to be optimistic at the beginning of a class. It's possible to have hope at the end of a class, provided you think that you're going to pass. But in the middle, where you've got a long way to go, and you're too far down the road to turn back, it can be rough. Yet as Samwise Gamgee says in The Lord of the Rings, it's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? How am I possibly going to get through this? We ask ourselves. It's too hard. The way is unclear. We might even throw up our hands to the heavens and ask, why God? Why me? Why this? Where are you? But as Sam reminds us, in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something. even if you were too small to understand. That's why writing is not just thinking. As journalist Donald Murray says, writing is revising. George Bernard Shaw said that he regularly revised his work, sometimes up to 50 times. Novelist James Michener said that important work must be written over and over and over again, up to 6 or 7 times, because revising is about not just re-envisioning your paper, but re-envisioning your perspective. It's in the late nights of revising your work again and again that you see things anew, that you rediscover your mission. And what felt like disjointed scribbles on the page suddenly become full of meaning and purpose. To be in the middle is to struggle with confusion, doubt, and even darkness. To be in the middle of things is to be in the middle of the crucible and to press forward in faith. To be in the middle of things is to be continually writing and revising your own story. Ralph Winter is a man who understands the power of stories. His career has been a testimony to the enduring power of art and its ability to speak truth and beauty into our lives. It's stories that teach us and encourage us to continue on through the messy middle of life. Tonight, we come together to learn from his wisdom and to honor his gift of storytelling. But before we do, we must acknowledge the many contributions of those who have helped us put this event together. We want to thank the theater program, Professor Lee Lyons, Professor Zach Bartot, AJ Perlin, and Stephanie Hull for graciously allowing us to host the DPLA event tonight here in the Wallace Theater. And we want to thank the many talented CAVID students who have showcased their films and their art. And if you just came in and didn't have a chance to visit in the lobby, please check out their work and at the reception afterwards. We also want to acknowledge Ron Ellis, our president, who is with us tonight at this event. Thank you for being here. And we're especially grateful for our co-sponsors. In the Office of Student Success, Tae Sung and Steve Nielsen for their leadership, Mike Osadchuk and Emily Golden for their partnership. And we could not have done it without the many student workers in the Office of Student Success. Those in the Writing Center, the Tutoring Center, the front desk. For all of your hospitality and in serving us this evening, we thank you. And we also want to thank Nico Carrillo for his work in putting together all the videos that have previewed this event this evening. In the College of Architecture, Visual Arts and Design, we want to thank Mark Robertson, Dean of CAVID, who will be speaking to us in just a few moments, as well as Dr. Melissa Croteau, Renee Lopez, and Ellie Dickerson for helping the day's programming. In the Office of the Provost, we want to thank Dr. Wayne Fletcher and Claudia Valdez for their support. And finally, our Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Chuck Sands. We are grateful for your leadership and for your presence here with us tonight. I'm going to ask Dr. Sands to come up and share a word of welcome, and then Dean Roberson will follow him afterward to introduce our speaker and our distinguished guest. Dr. Sands.
So good evening and welcome. Actually, it's not evening yet. Good afternoon and welcome. So glad that you are here for the distinguished public lecture this evening. I'm so excited to hear from our guest, and really, as Josh mentioned, the ideas that are floating in the lobby right now really inspired me. The work of our students, the excitement and energy that they have really set a great tone as I came in this evening. So I know we're going to have a great time. We just want to welcome all of you. If you're guests to our campus, so glad that you are here. Most importantly, we also want to welcome all of our students who are in here today. We're so glad that you're here today. So thanks again for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you, Ralph.
That's really bright. Okay. So Ralph Winter has been a major Hollywood bigwig for many, many, many years. He produced the first 4 X-Men movies. He produced a number of the Star Trek movies, which are 2 of the biggest film franchises of all time, 2 of the top 10 in movie history. He produced a couple of the Fantastic Fours, produced Tim Burton's version of Planet of the Apes, a lot of movies that I really love, actually, and even produced the biggest streaming movie on Netflix during COVID, which strangely enough turned out to be 1993's Hocus Pocus, which became so popular that it spawned a 30-year later sequel that he also produced. And so he has been involved with a lot of things over a lot of years, going all the way back to, I think, Gone with the Wind, right? And a couple of Thomas Edison movies I think you're involved in. But now he's the head of creative for the Sphere Studio, doing, that big round thing in Las Vegas that everyone has been to except me, and it looks amazing. He's basically redefining the way we interact with entertainment. So he's had a very long, very varied, successful career in Hollywood as a producer. But what makes Ralph different from all the rest of the run-of-the-mill Hollywood bigwigs is that he's also produced a number of faith-based films throughout the years, from 2000's Left Behind to What Remains in 2022. And he once told me that he had the rare opportunity to be openly Christian in Hollywood without being penalized, because people knew that he could help them get their story told and also be financially successful, which people seem to like. And so because of that, he told me that whenever someone came across a project that smelled vaguely Christian, they would oftentimes call him and ask him what to do with it, because he was the only Christian a lot of them knew. And now think about that for a second. Think about being the only person, or one of the few people, who represent Christianity to some of the most influential people in one of the most influential industries in the world. That's a lot of pressure, right? I mean, Ralph has dinner with, is on the phone with, is good friends with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, in front of the camera, behind the camera. You should hear his stories. I assume at least some of them are true. And it's a lot of pressure, right? You're around a crowd that's very impressive, very successful, and it's got to be tempting to just go along with that crowd and to compromise what you think and what you believe in because of the people that you're around. But through these many years, Ralph has not only maintained his belief in what makes a quality film, but also maintained a belief in his God. And that's what really matters to us here at CBU. So back in 2013, the Christian Ministries folks invited Ralph out to do a talk, and I got to be a part of that. And that introduced me to Ralph and started our opportunity to get to know each other. And he has become a great friend of CBU Film, a great friend to me, well, up until the time that he didn't get me into the U2 show at the Sphere. Now he's dead to me. But up until that time, great. It was awesome. And I remember at that first talk that he gave here, Ralph discussed the fact that Christian movies are so bad. They've gotten a little better, but it was a really low bar. And he said they're so bad because the people that make them seem to only care about the end, the money shot at the very end where everything goes right. And they didn't care about sort of crafting a good enough story to get someone who doesn't understand the end all the way to the end and to care about what happens at the end, right? And so it really made a lot of sense to me, and it really inspired us here to want to create a film program here at CBU that appreciates and understands and embraces the power of story. I remember him saying that nobody went to see Titanic wondering if the boat sank. Spoiler alert. They went to see Titanic because they wanted to learn the story of Jack and Rose and how they fell in love against all odds and stood on the front of the boat and yelled about being the king of the world. So then when the boat sank, you actually cared about it because you knew at least 2 people that were on that boat and you cared about them, right? And so this really inspired us here at CBU Film. I remember Ralph talking about that there's 7 elements that he believes every great story should have. I saw a video that Pixar did once and pointed out to him that they have 21 elements in their movies. I asked him if that's why their movies are 3 times better than his. I don't know. But I just loved the way he talked about films. I love the way he thought about films. I love the way that he thinks about and still thinks about and still talks about how we as storytellers and filmmakers and artists and writers and creators and pastors and people can ask questions that compel people to even care about the answer. And you're going to be blessed to hear him talk about that this evening here once again at CBU all these years later. Thanks so much for being here with us, Ralph. It's been great hanging out with you again today, as always. And it's great that you brought your wife with you this time. Thank you for coming. And it's great that we get to call you a friend. So thank you for being with us.
Okay. Can't see anybody. That's probably good. All right. Well, I thought I'd start just to talk a little about what I'm doing at Sphere. Your president has gone there, so it's okay for any of you to go to Vegas now to see Sphere. That's the only thing you're authorized to go see, though. It's PG. But we're doing some pretty exciting stuff. This is a big screen. Thank you for bringing that today. Sphere is 3.5 acres as a screen. It's 16K by 16K, and it projects at 60 frames a second, which is twice what your television at home. It's about 10 times the size of an IMAX screen. And we're creating experiences that are to take you to another place. We have wind, we have haptics in your seat, we have smell, we have hot and cold. And all of it is, we're not competing with movies, but we're trying to take and create a cinematic experience that takes you to a place that you probably have never gone to. And the program we have running there that Ron has seen is in 27 countries, and I can tell you that I've been to some of those places and you don't want to go there. It's a pretty arduous travel and all of that, but we've captured that, and that's kind of what we're doing up there, is creating those experiences that you can only see there. I don't even have videos of this because it doesn't work. Even the stuff you saw from social media only begins to touch what that looks like. And I'm able to sort of leverage decades of making movies and television to help form those shows, which is what gets me excited and go to work every day. And it's still about storytelling, and and after so many years of extensive travel of 6 or 8 months a year, I now get to work in Burbank. There's a mini dome that's 1/4 scale right outside the Burbank airport. We use that for testing, and then we take that material to Vegas for the audience. In my career, I've never really been sure what I'm going to do or what's going to be worthwhile, and I've always been questioning or being questioned, how do I fit in? That tension of faith versus movies and the television business. And even when I was at my church in Glendale, after a while, some of the other leaders came to me and said, are you over it? Did you get it out of your system? They wanted me to get a real job. And sort of the rebellious person that I am, and going to Berkeley and everything else, was, to push back and to go deeper into the movie and television business to see and demonstrate that it's worthwhile. And in the Christian circles, it's not always been worthwhile. It's been a lonely travel for many of those years. And along that way, we use a lot of Christian words about, do you feel called? Do I feel called to this job? A lot of times Christians come to me with projects, God gave me this project. Usually I find that's because he didn't want it. But the calling, is that search for purpose and search for meaning. So in my church, the pastor has graciously allowed me to do a Sunday school class where I take, during the Oscar season, just finished, the Best Picture nominees. There's 10 pictures. And if you want to come to my Sunday school class, you have to see that movie. I'll assign one of the 10 movies each week. You have to see that movie ahead of time, bring your Bible, and then we'll talk about what the movie means, how it's structured, what's the impact of that movie, and then how does that line up with what we believe as followers of Christ. And then on the last Sunday, which is Oscar Sunday, I hand out my Academy ballot, and we can see if you're as smart as a third grader in terms of voting for Best Picture. But what I like about that is that, the questions that come up of those 10 movies that are honored by the 10,000 or so artists that are at the top of their field, what are they asking? What's the issue that everyone's talking about? And great art, for me, is about the questions, not about the answers. And so we dig into those and we find out, what does it mean? How does it compare? And so I want to highlight that with a movie today. Now, realizing I could be run out of here with pitchforks and torches, I did a men's retreat and used the same movie a couple of weeks ago and told them that we were going to talk about the latest movie on the minds and hearts at every men's retreat, Barbie. So let's run the trailer. I just want to refresh.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever. It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks,
Some things have been happening that might be related.
when my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground. What do I have to do? You have to go to the real world.
You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Closer I am find. Closer I am to find.
I'm coming with you.
Okay.
Wow, this is the real world. What's going on? Why are these men looking at me?
Yeah, they're also staring at me.
Barbie in the real world. That's impossible.
If this got out, this could mean extremely weird things for our world. This would be catastrophic!
We haven't played with Barbie since we were like 5 years old. Oh.
No one rests until this doll is back in a box.
Even if nobody else sings along.
Humans only have one ending.
Get that Barbie!
Ideas live forever.
No, I won't let you do just one appendectomy.
But I'm a man.
But not a doctor.
Can I talk to a doctor?
You are talking to a doctor.
And I need a clicky pen?
No.
A sharp thing?
No.
There he is. Doctor!
Somebody get security.
Is Barbie if you still in doubt?
How does a pop culture movie have an existential crisis about thinking about dying? Barbie is a Frankenstein movie, from an inanimate object to becoming human at the end. And the journey that she goes on is an existential journey of learning about limits and where she is. And when I talked earlier in the class about the 7 words of how I look at movies, the need, desire, opponent, plan, battle, self-revelation, and restoration, she doesn't want anything to change in Barbie land. But she has to go visit Weird Barbie to figure out that she's got to go into the real world to solve this problem, these thoughts of death, these limitations that she's now starting to think about that isn't a part of the Barbie world. And her opponent, Ken, who learns about patriarchy. And Barbie experiences the messiness, connections. She sees couples, she sees arguing, she sees laughing, she sees people being alone. And she sees an older woman next to her at the bus stop. And she realizes and looks over at her and says, "You're beautiful." And the woman says, "I know it." And she starts to see the limits of where her life is if she makes that choice. And she goes on that journey, she goes on that plan. She meets with high school students, gets devastated by them. There's a ridiculous battle with Mattel and the Kens and the beaching and the ballet. It's ridiculous. But that absurdity is what makes, it all so interesting. Now here's a second clip I want you to watch. This is about the movie. It's one shot, but I want you to watch this music video.
I used to float, now I just fall down. I used to know, but I'm made for? What was I made for? Taking a drive, I wasn't ideal, looked so alive. Turns out I'm not real, just something you paid for. What was I made for? 'Cause I don't know how to feel, but I wanna try. I don't know how to feel, but someday I might. Someday I When did it end? All the enjoyment. I'm sad again. Don't tell my boyfriend, it's not what he's made for. What was I made for? 'Cause I don't know how to feel, but I wanna try. I don't know how to feel, but someday I might. Someday I think I forgot how to be happy. Something I'm not, but something I can be. Something I wait for. Something I'm made for. Something I'm made for.
Song of the Year, won 2 Grammys, won an Oscar this year. She's 22. She's your age. What was I made for? I used to float, now I just fall down. What was I made for? When did it all end? All the enjoyment. I think I forgot how to be happy. These are all the kinds of questions that the doll, Barbie, is asking inside of this movie. She's trying on outfits. What is her calling? She weathers the earthquakes and storm and wind and rain. And in the movie, Barbie figures out that she can help Ken find a way, and she apologizes. Every night doesn't have to be girls' night. And Ken figures out his way, and she becomes human at the end. So this is not Christianity. This is not the way to start your evangelism program with Barbie. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm suggesting that the questions and the desires are human, and what artists and musicians and filmmakers, who are the prophets of our day, sometimes highlight the issues that we don't think about and issues we don't stop and reflect about. Barbie is the modern-day Frankenstein fable myth, a creation who wants to be real. But what does that mean? I did a series for Netflix called Altered Carbon, and the series is about the future and about living forever. Can you live forever? Should you live forever? What's a soul? What does that mean? I think this year's Best Picture nominees highlight all of these, and I'm not going to go through all 10 movies, but 2 of them I want to point out if you haven't seen them. These 2 movies won the highest awards at the Cannes Film Festival in the world. The first one is called Zone of Interest, and it's based on the true story of Rudolf Haas, who was the commandant at Auschwitz, and he lived right next door with his family. And they had picnics and parties and friends, grew vegetables, flowers, and enjoyed their life, middle class, upwardly mobile, middle class life. He rode his horse 20 yards to work. While next door you can hear, the sound is important in this movie, you can hear the gunshots and dogs and screams, all in this idyllic life just over the wall where people ignored the issues. Because if they thought for a moment of what they were doing, they wouldn't have lived. When Rudolf Haas was caught a year after the war ended, and he was put on trial at Nuremberg. And he was accused of killing 3.5 people, and he objected. He said, I only killed 2.5 million. The other 1 million died of starvation. Wow. Wow. Anatomy of a Fall is the other movie that won the highest prize. What is truth? Is it a murder or suicide of the husband, and the wife is a suspect? Their 13-year-old son is a key witness, injured years before, his vision impaired. And yet his perceptions and his limited view is how we discern the truth. Truth is hard to come by. How do we piece it together? It's asking those questions that are current in our culture and our politics today. All 10 movies are outrageous stories. Some of them, like Poor Things, are absurd, but with all the deep questions about life. Flannery O'Connor, one of the greatest writers in the 20th century, wrote, "To the hard of hearing, you shout, and for the almost blind, you draw large and startling figures." The Bible has some pretty outrageous things that have softened over time. Unfortunately, we sanitize our Bible stories for the flannel board and for Sunday school. Don't read the book of Judges in the Old Testament. You don't hear many sermons on that book. Or don't think about Abraham tying his son Isaac and putting him on the barbecue and looking for a match. There's 500 to 600 of these stories that are dark, honest, genuine, and relevant. The Prodigal Son, the liturgy, and the 4th Sunday of Lent coming up. It opens very dark, wanting his father dead, but he has a self-revelation. He comes to his senses when he's eating less than the food that the pigs are eating, and he comes to a new restoration and equilibrium. Well, what if studying how movies tell stories that we are better equipped to understand the Bible? What if discerning the questions in the culture today, we find relevant strategies in the Bible to live? What if studying American Beauty helps us understand the book of Ecclesiastes? Because both movies are asking the very same questions. There's so many other issues for today, how we relate from a faith point of view to these relevance. And I'm just looking for what the questions the culture's asking, and how do we relate to that as people of faith? Sometimes we're just in completely different worlds. A faith group spends $17 million on a Super Bowl ad because Jesus gets me. Is it worth it? Does the message get across? Or in our neighborhood, a sign just went up on one of the directional signs, Jesus or hell. We also have this around, Jesus is the answer. What's the question? It's a message we can all agree with, but too often we're about the answers rather than the questions. Christian movies get better, but they're mostly a country song played backwards. Get your dog back, get your job back, get your wife back. We keep dragging out the baggage of the answers, hoping to convert people with the right answer and saying the right words in the right order. We talk about the ending. We should be talking about the questions and the journey of life. And again, I'm not saying you should do an evangelism strategy around Barbie or Oppenheimer or any of these movies. But I think we need to struggle with the questions the culture's asking and obsessed with. And in that struggle, coming alongside others, sharing our self-revelations, who we are, is how we find some measure of progress and going on the journey together. But for that to be meaningful, we must earn the journey, or that worship is empty. The world's shooting messengers these days. Political liberals shoot conservatives and vice versa. We've hardened our messenger positions. We're missing what the truth is. We're missing the message. But the world is watching. Our kids are watching. History will tell the truth. What does Jesus say about how to tell what is true? Matthew 7, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown in the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. The questions are what we should be talking about. What was I made for? Thank you.
We are so excited. Thank you so much for that inspiring talk. And I want to just follow up with a couple points and really talk about them. Our theme this year is about being in the middle and in the messy middle, and the purpose of writing and communication when we're in the middle of things. We're in the middle of a set here that's being built. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, right, which will be playing soon. And if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I want to make sure we encourage you to do so. Our theater program here is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So big shout out to our theater program.
Victor Hugo.
That's right. Les Mis, I know that's a movie that you care very much about.
Victor Hugo, when he died in 1883, 2 million people were in the streets of Paris. He was revered.
That's right, yeah. And partly because he was asking the right questions, as we think about the messy middle, I've been thinking about this a little bit more. I recently saw Darren Aronofsky, your director for Postcard from Earth, being interviewed, and he talked a little bit about what it was like to work with the technology that you all had to invent for the sphere, right? And he said something about, flying the airplane while it was in the middle of being built, or something like that. Could you tell us a little bit more about that experience of working on a project on that scale in the messy middle of things?
We went to 27 countries. We photographed with a camera that had never been used before, and we had no place to screen it. So we had to trust that what we were capturing would actually show in Vegas. Vegas, the screen wasn't up until August, and we opened in October.
So you didn't even know what it would look like in the final product.
We had in Burbank a quarter-scale screen, and that went up earlier in that year, 23, and so we had some reference points, but it wasn't the full size, and so we were constantly fixing. Our first shoot that we went out to failed completely, wasted the money, would not show. It wouldn't go together, and there was some little aberration in the lens or whatever. So we were inventing the process. We were inventing the pipeline. We were inventing how to fix the camera with code and software, and people working round the clock trying to figure that out. So we crammed, 26 weeks of post into 6 weeks. People work round the clock, and we're still pinching ourselves when it comes out. And what came out on October 6th, we had to revise because of the way we see it. We revised about 150 shots to go back in, which we put back in January. So you saw the good ones.
Also, the original screening or the original show, it's changed since then. Yeah.
And that's the advantage of being in one theater.
Yes.
I can't do that with X-Men in 15,000 theaters. I can't change all the prints.
Yeah.
But here in one, I can, and just make it better. So it's a privilege to do that.
I start with asking you about that experience and that question because the purpose of the Distinguished Public Lecture event is to try to help students connect the dots between what you all are doing in your writing assignments in your classes and to life afterwards, right? And we're trying to really emphasize the importance of writing and communication for your future professional success, right? And learning how to write now, struggling, right? Just as Dr. Fullman said in the introduction, struggling with that revision process is a skill that will be transferable later on, regardless of what industry you go into, right? And I think your experience as a producer, can you say more about that, about the importance of writing and communication, right? When we're not talking about writing assignments for a grade anymore.
Story wins the day. You go back and watch the movie Amistad. and the attorneys there talk about how the best story is going to win in the courtroom. And if you listen to people in business, you listen to people in culture, you listen to people in law, it's all about the story. It's the narrative. And someone has to craft that narrative. It's even when we do our financial and budgets, how are we going to present the budget to the chairman? There's a narrative to how we present the budget.
It's not just the facts, not just the data.
No. You start with the data, and then you have to craft it into something that's understandable. How did we get from A to B to C? And that takes a writer. That takes someone with, an organization and thought process that figures it out and does it in a logical way, and in the best ones, in a compelling way.
Yeah. You've also talked extensively about even your work as a producer in terms of the way you communicate with the people that work for you. Can you say something more about that, about the importance of how communication matters in our business relationships and things like that?
Well, as a boss, you have to be careful how you communicate with your team. It sounds stupid, but I'm careful about what I wear because I know people are watching. And the littlest things they look for something to have a problem with, or that's not right. I think about those things with my employees when I get dressed in the morning. It sounds stupid, but I'm trying to think like they are. And how you treat people, for me, becomes my expression of Christianity. I want to pay people a fair wage. I expect people to work to what they're assigned to work. I'm not afraid of firing people. I do that all the time, but I want to do that with respect. Usually it's best for them and best for us. But I also want to reward people, and I want to treat people fairly. I am not a Christian who hires people onto a show and then doesn't pay them. There's too many of those people out there, and it's wrong. It's dead wrong. I don't do that. I can't. I can't live with myself. That's not the way Jesus would do it, and we can't do that either. So how I treat my staff and employees and people that we hire, it's very important about respect and about, treating them as an equal and treating them as, a partner in going down the road.
Earlier today you talked about even just the communication choices you make sometimes. When you encourage somebody, you put it in writing, but when you have to discipline somebody, you never put that in writing. Could you say something more about that?
Yeah, I learned this the hard way. When you want to praise someone, you want to put it in writing. You want to publish it. You want to tell everybody that this person's done a great job or they've made this contribution or done whatever. When you have a problem with somebody and you want to criticize somebody, or you've got a bone to pick, you've got to figure something out, you don't want to put that in writing. No one knows the context of that. And that sort of passive-aggressive thing of sending an email or a text, that I don't like you anymore, or you don't deserve to be here, or whatever those words are, those need to be done in person. Those need to be done with your voice and not in writing. And you mix those up, and you're in trouble. You cannot mix those up.
You said that you learned that the hard way.
I did. because I said some things in an email early in my career, or a note or a memo or whatever, and it came back to haunt me because of just that. It diminishes you. It diminished me in asking for things or saying that this isn't right and this isn't the way things ought to be. And I would have been better off having that conversation face to face than putting it in writing. It gets distributed around, no one has the context, and everyone thinks you're a jerk.
We have a lot of students here. Over 78% of our registrants are students for this event tonight. And what advice do you have for them as they're working on their writing papers, right, and their assignments, and learning how to write and communicate, not just through their assignments, but with classmates, with faculty members, through their various activities? What are some of the lessons that they need to learn about the importance of writing and communication at this stage in their lives that will set them up for success in years to come?
Well, let me think. I can think of a couple things. One is, if you're going to be a writer, say, of screenplays, you ought to be reading great screenplays, honored screenplays, award-winning screenplays, or novels, or whatever it is you're going to write. You ought to be soaking in that stuff, soaking in the best. It's not that you can't go and watch popcorn movies and all of that, but that's fun and turn your brain off. But you need to focus on reading and being trained in the good stuff. I think also my advice for people that are screenwriters is that if you're going to write a screenplay, an original screenplay, you should write something that's going to change your life. You should write something personal that you struggle with, something that you want to see that problem solved, and in the writing process, you solve that problem because it means something to you. It's going to change something in your life. And if that's true, it's probably going to change someone else as well. They're probably dealing with the same thing. And the other thing I'd say is that, it's great to be in college. It's a cold world when you get out. It's harsh. And no one's going to be there to help you. So you got to build relationships. You got to build friendships. You got to build partnerships. You got to figure out a way that you're going to survive out there. Writing is hard. Not many people appreciate it. How do I get my stuff read? Who's going to see it? Who's going to appreciate what I've done? How can I sell it? How can I market it? Seasoned writers ask those same questions. You need to read, meet those people, find pathways that they've found. You got to dig into that now, because once you're out there, if you haven't thought about this ahead of time, it's going to be cold. It's hard.
And that's part of even the journey of asking the right questions, not just having the right answers, but asking the right questions. And I just thought that point tonight was just so powerful, right? As Christians, we have the answers, but often we're not even asking the right kinds of questions. I want you to maybe perhaps elaborate on that a little bit more in terms of even sharing your own integration of your work and your faith.
Sure. I think that, I've learned early on that just as much as I enjoy worship, that's not a way for evangelism in terms of getting other people to understand what those end steps are. It's the earlier steps. It's walking with them on those struggles. And so in the course of production, a lot of the friends that I have working in production, it's, we struggle with the same things. We've got deadlines. We're trying to solve a creative problem, trying to figure out something for the director, for the studio, and we struggle and work on that together. And, for me, what's rewarding is those people come back to me afterwards and say, how did you do that? How can you get through that? And we talk about faith. We talk about prayer. We talk about, what that means and what I believe and where my worth and value is. I've been fired a number of times from movies. And every time I've been fired off a big movie, I've dodged a bullet. And people in the current job, there's a bit of a culture of fear, and there's a lot of pressure. What's next in Sphere, et cetera, et cetera. People are afraid of being fired. I'm really not afraid of being fired, because I don't find my worth and value just in my job. And I tell people, here's what happens when I get fired. My wife throws the biggest party you've ever seen. And, we have a lot of fun and celebrate that you dodge another bullet. So we don't find our value and worth in just the job. I like my job. I like what I do. I enjoy it. I would not be happy being fired, but it's not the end of the world. It's really not.
And it seems like, that confidence comes because you have a certain answer that comes from your faith. But also in many times those experiences of being fired or being let go from a project, does that generate new questions for you and a new journey? Earlier today, we were having a conversation. You talked a little bit about an opportunity you had to take on a pretty big film and a crucial decision you had to make.
So when my kids were in high school, I was in New York and prepping a movie, going to London. Hackers was the movie. And there was a tragedy in our family, and our kids went home. And it was a hard struggle that I was going off to London, my wife was home, friends, family, community, everyone around trying to make that work. And while I'm in London, I'm offered the new Bond movie. But the head of UA Movies came to me and said, we want you to leave the movie. And I'm like, okay, here I'm fired again, okay, whatever. And he goes, no, I want you to leave this movie and I want you to take over the Bond movie, they're in trouble. And I said, well, I got to talk to my wife. And so I flew her to New York, I came back to New York, and the decision was, that I would not take that movie because it's so hard to raise teenagers, and her doing it alone wasn't going to work. So I committed to not take another job until the kids were out of high school, at least not on the job outside of Los Angeles. So there was about a 6 or 8 month period where I'm praying for significance, I'm praying for jobs that are worthwhile, and my wife is praying for every job that happens within 2 blocks of our home. And that was a hard period. It was hard to wait, hard to figure out what's next or what'll happen. Will the kids graduate before I go to work again? Well, what's going to happen? And this doesn't happen every time, but God answered the prayer this time with a show that I was doing about cops and high incident out in the valley. And so it was nearby and I could sleep at home. And by the way, Steven Spielberg was one of the producers, and I worked with him every day for 2 years. That wouldn't have happened had I gone on to put a James Bond movie on my Star Trek resume, because I thought that was the right thing to do. Yeah. And it was my wife, it was God helping me understand to stop, slow down, ask the right questions. How do I pray? How do I sit still, which is hard for me to do, and wait to see what happens?
And that's such a powerful, redemptive story. And yet, the part that is most fascinating is I would love to zero in on those 6 to 8 months and the questions that you were struggling with. I started off college as a bioengineer because I loved answers, I said, growing up. I loved that math had answers, science had answers. But I went through my own kind of existential crisis when I was a college student, and all of a sudden questions became more interesting to me. Yeah. And eventually I found my way to becoming a literature student not because literature gave me better answers, but because it gave me better questions. And so I feel like as I've been going through my own kind of life and journey and career, I thought that the questions would end at a certain point, right? I thought the questions were relevant for when you were a college student, not sure what's next, right? Not sure who to fall in love with, what to do with my life, right? What life will look like after this is over. But you're telling us that the questions persist. What are some of the questions you're still asking at this stage in your career?
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I like doing this. This is fun at Sphere, but maybe I want to go back to making movies. Maybe I want to consult. Maybe I want to teach. I don't know. I've said to them at the studio that they said, "Do you want to stay?" Which was, a loaded question, like, did you want me to leave? But I said, okay, look, if you think I'm adding value and I think I'm having fun, we're good. One of those two things changes, and then we should have a conversation. So for the moment, they think I'm adding value and I think I'm having fun. When that stops, I want to find a job where I can learn something, where it's going to be fun to go to work. If it's drudgery, I'm done. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be fun to try something new.
Yeah. And part of the struggle, the wrestling with that, the revision of that, discovering that is part of learning how to write a better question for ourselves, right? And really, I really hope that our students will take that away tonight from this talk, right? That our faith gives us the answers, but how might we be more attuned to the questions that our culture is asking? How might we be more attuned to the questions that are bubbling up within us, right? And that it's okay to ask those questions, to begin a journey, to really seek out, right? How to clarify the questions. And we know what the answer is, but part of the journey is asking those questions better.
Yeah.
Will you please join me in thanking Ralph Winter for joining us tonight?
Well, thank you, Ralph, for your attendance here, for your inspiring stories of creativity and faith. We want to present this award to you this evening. So if you would, come on over here. The University Writing Center at Cal Baptist University presents to Ralph Winter the 2024 Distinguished Public Lecture Award for cultivating purpose-driven writers, communicators, and influencers. Please join me in congratulating Ralph Winter. Let's go ahead and close this evening with a prayer. Father in heaven, who has blessed each of us with unique gifts and special talents, not for our own glory, but for yours, and for the purpose of helping others, especially those who cannot help themselves. We give you thanks. May we use our gifts, may we use our stories to grow the kingdom and to build the city of God on earth. May we remember, like Sam, that there is some good in this world and it's worth fighting for every day. May we work for the good of others in the calling of your Spirit. Whenever he calls, wherever he leads, may we answer. May we continue to ask the right questions. And as we live our lives, may we tell our stories again and again, the stories of your faithfulness, so that people may learn in us the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. In whose name we pray. Amen. Thank you.